What if I told you that everything you believed about strength, about courage, about success has been slightly off course? Not wrong, just slightly tilted, just enough that you've been chasing a version of yourself that feels exhausting to maintain. And deep down, you know it. We are raised in a world that tells us to armor up, to keep our hearts protected, to show only the polished version of ourselves, to hustle for our worth. We are told to be confident, but not too much. Honest, but not too raw. Brave, but only if it makes others comfortable. But here's the thing, the most powerful transformation of your life won't come when you're standing tall, pretending everything is fine. It will come the moment you drop the armor. The moment you admit, I am tired of performing. I am ready to live. We are taught from a young age that being strong means being unshakable, untouchable, unbreakable. That to show emotion is to show weakness. That to be vulnerable is to expose ourselves to danger. But this is one of the most damaging lies we've ever been sold. Because true strength is not found in the hiding, the pretending, or the armor. True strength is found in vulnerability, the courage to show up when there are no guarantees, to speak when your voice trembles, to share the parts of yourself that have been silenced for too long. It's in the willingness to be seen, truly seen, that we unlock the kind of strength that doesn't just survive adversity, but transforms through it. Think about the moments in your life that changed you. Really changed you. They weren't the polished, picture-perfect ones. They were the messy moments, the heartbreaks, the failures, the moments when everything fell apart and you had no choice but to either break open or break down. And if you're honest with yourself, you'll see it clearly. It was in those raw spaces that something deeper was born, a kind of resilience that couldn't have come from comfort, a kind of wisdom that didn't come from winning but from enduring. That is vulnerability. That is power. There's a reason we admire people who speak their truth, who open up about their pain, who stand on stages or in front of cameras or across kitchen tables and say, this is what I went through, and I'm still here. It's not because they're perfect. It's because they're real. And in a world full of filters and facades, real is revolutionary. But here's what most people don't realize. Being real takes far more strength than pretending ever will. It's easy to wear a mask. It's easy to say, I'm fine, when you're not. It's easy to keep people at arm's length. What's hard, what's brave, is to let people in, to risk judgment, to risk disappointment, to risk being misunderstood. Vulnerability is not oversharing. It's not putting your pain on display for attention. Vulnerability is a conscious choice to show up without the need for perfection. It's the moment you sit across from someone and say, I don't have all the answers, but I'm here. It's raising your hand and saying, I need help. It's walking into a room not with a polished script, but with a trembling heart. It's saying, this is hard, I'm scared, and I'm still going to try. That is courage. That is the foundation of every meaningful relationship, every act of growth, every real breakthrough. We have been conditioned to chase invulnerability, to look like we have it all figured out, to act strong even when we're falling apart. We praise the person who pushes through and question the one who pauses to feel. But what kind of world are we building when we reward numbness and punish truth? When we tell people it's better to break silently than to cry out for support? What if we've been measuring strength all wrong? What if true strength looks like leaning in when everything in you wants to shut down? What if it looks like standing in the center of your pain and saying, even here, I am worthy? There is nothing more disarming, more connective, more human than vulnerability. It bridges the gaps we thought were uncrossable. It softens the walls we built out of fear. It opens up conversations that heal generations. Vulnerability creates space for others to be real too. When one person chooses to be authentic, it gives silent permission for everyone else to drop their guard. And that is how change begins, not through lectures or slogans, but through one honest moment at a time. You may have been hurt in the past. You may have opened your heart and watched someone walk away. You may have shared your truth and been met with silence. And those moments matter. They leave marks. But let me remind you, being vulnerable is never the problem. The problem lies in a world that doesn't always know how to hold what is real. That's not your fault. And it doesn't mean you should stop showing up, because the risk of vulnerability is far outweighed by its reward, the reward of deeper connections, the reward of self-respect, the reward of peace that comes from no longer pretending. When we stop pretending, we start healing, and not just ourselves, but the people around us. Because when someone watches you step into your truth, they begin to believe it's possible for them too. Vulnerability is contagious in the best way. It spreads courage, not fear. It spreads honesty, not shame. It spreads hope, not perfection. And we need more of that in every room we enter, every conversation we hold, every relationship we build. You don't need to wait until you're completely healed, totally ready, or finally fearless to begin. You just need to start from where you are, with what you have, and let the truth be enough. Because the moment you choose to show up as your real, imperfect, authentic self, you are already strong. Stronger than the version of you who hides. Stronger than the one who hustles for approval. Stronger than the voice that tells you to stay small. Courage doesn't always look like bold declarations or grand, cinematic gestures. It doesn't always sound like roaring speeches or defiant stands. Sometimes courage is quiet. so quiet that only your heart can hear it. It whispers to you in the stillness, in the moments when you feel like giving up, when your legs are tired, when your spirit feels crushed under the weight of uncertainty. Courage is the choice to keep moving forward, even when no one is clapping, even when there's no spotlight, even when the fear feels bigger than the dream. We often wait for courage to feel like power. We wait for the fire, the confidence, the moment when everything finally aligns. But courage rarely feels like power in the moment. It feels like trembling hands, like knots in your stomach, like standing on the edge of something new and terrifying and choosing to leap anyway. Real courage is not the absence of fear. It is feeling the fear, acknowledging it, respecting it, and acting in spite of it. Courage is what happens when the desire to honor who you are becomes stronger than the desire to avoid discomfort. It takes courage to show up when you're not sure how you'll be received. It takes courage to raise your voice in a room that's used to your silence. It takes courage to ask for help when you've always been the strong one. Courage is not reserved for heroes and icons. It's required in everyday life. It's needed in the little moments, the quiet decisions that no one sees but you. Like getting out of bed on a day when your heart is heavy. Like walking away from something familiar because it no longer serves your growth. Like choosing honesty over convenience, integrity over popularity, love over fear. There is a myth we've been told that bravery is a one-time act, a bold leap that happens in a flash of glory. But courage is not an event. It is a practice. It is a decision you make again and again, moment by moment, when you choose to live by your values rather than your fears. It is choosing discomfort over regret, truth over silence, movement over stagnation. And sometimes it's just choosing to stay when everything in you wants to run. The people who live with real courage aren't fearless. They've simply decided that fear won't be their ruler. They've learned to walk with fear, to let it ride in the passenger seat without giving it the steering wheel. Fear can come along for the ride, but it doesn't get to choose the direction. Courage says, I hear you, fear. I see you. But I'm driving this car, and you won't always get it right. Sometimes you'll take the risk and fall. Sometimes you'll speak up and be misunderstood. Sometimes you'll try something new and fail spectacularly. But failure is not the enemy. Avoiding failure at the expense of your growth, that's the real danger. Courage understands that failure is not a reflection of your worth. It's a necessary part of your evolution. Every time you try and fall, you learn. You build grit. You expand your capacity. You grow stronger in the broken places. Courage is also knowing when to say no, when to set the boundary, when to stop giving pieces of yourself to people who don't know how to value them. It's walking away from what's familiar when it's no longer fulfilling. It's disappointing others in order to be loyal to yourself. And sometimes that's the hardest thing of all, because we are taught to please, to make everyone else comfortable, to be agreeable. But people pleasing is not the same as kindness. True kindness includes yourself. True courage asks, what does my soul need? And then listens to the answer, even if it costs you comfort. It takes courage to start, and it takes even more courage to keep going, especially when progress is slow, when the reward is delayed, when your energy runs low and the finish line isn't in sight. That's when courage becomes discipline, consistency, the daily choice to align your actions with your purpose, even when motivation runs out. There's a kind of strength in showing up day after day for the work, the healing, the dream, even when no one notices. That's the kind of courage that builds unshakable confidence. Not the flashy kind, but the deep, grounded kind that says, I've earned this. I faced the storms and I'm still here. Courage also requires trust. Trust in yourself, in your intuition, in your ability to handle what comes next. It's not about being reckless or charging ahead blindly. It's about tuning in and asking, what do I know to be true right now? What step can I take with the information I have? And then taking that step, even if the whole path isn't clear. The bravest people you know didn't wait for certainty. They took one step, and then another, and then another. And that's how transformation happens, not in giant leaps, but in 1,000 courageous steps taken in the direction of your truth. And some days, courage looks like rest, like stepping back, not because you're giving up, but because you respect your limits. Courage honors your humanity. It doesn't demand that you power through at all costs. It reminds you that sustainable strength includes recovery, reflection, and rest. You are not a machine. You are a human being with a body, a heart, a spirit that needs nurturing. Pausing is not weakness. It's wisdom. It's part of the rhythm of resilience. There is something deeply powerful about owning your story, not the version you tell at job interviews, not the curated highlight reel you share online, but the real story, the one that carries your scars, your setbacks, your survival, the one filled with moments of confusion, grief, heartbreak, failure, and resilience. That story is not your burden. It's your brilliance. It's not the thing you need to hide to be accepted. It's the thing that, when shared with truth and integrity, becomes the key to unlocking connection, purpose, and healing, not just for you, but for others who are silently carrying their own untold stories. There's a reason people are drawn to authenticity. It's because we are all walking around wondering if we're the only ones who feel the way we do. The only ones who've fallen. The only ones who've questioned everything. The only ones who've experienced shame, fear, failure, and regret When someone stands up and says, "This is what I've been through," it breaks the illusion of isolation. It pierces the wall of perfection we've all tried to maintain and lets others know they're not alone. That moment of shared humanity is sacred. It is where healing begins. It is where we find ourselves in each other. Too often, we're told that our stories only matter when they're neat, successful, and complete. But that's not how life works. Real stories are messy. They're ongoing. They don't always wrap up in a bow. And that's exactly what makes them relatable. That's what makes them real. It takes courage to own a story that's still unfolding. It takes strength to say, "I don't have all the answers yet, but here's where I've been, here's what I've learned, and here's who I'm becoming." Every part of your journey, especially the parts you wish never happened, has shaped you. Those broken chapters, those quiet struggles, those seasons of darkness, they are not signs of weakness. They are the birthplace of your strength. You didn't just survive them, you were transformed by them. And when you begin to see your pain not as something that disqualifies you, but as something that equips you to relate, to empathize, and to lead with heart, that's when your story becomes your superpower. We all carry narratives about ourselves that were handed to us by others, parents, teachers, partners, society. Some of those narratives told us we weren't enough, that we had to earn love, that our value depended on our productivity, appearance, or success. These stories aren't facts. They are wounds dressed up as truth. And the moment we begin to examine and rewrite them is the moment we reclaim our power. You are the author now. You get to decide what your story means. You get to shift the narrative from victim to survivor, from invisible to powerful, from broken to whole. Sharing your story is not about oversharing or performing your pain. It's about telling the truth with intention and compassion. It's about choosing to be seen in a world that profits from your invisibility. And the irony is, the more honest you are about your struggles, the more people will trust your strength. Because people can spot fake from a mile away. What we crave is real. We crave the kind of leadership, friendship, and connection that comes from someone who's been through it and decided to keep going anyway. Your story has value, not just because of where you are now, but because of what it took to get here. Your story carries wisdom, lessons that no book, no course, no title could ever teach. You've lived things that can't be taught, only felt. You've endured things that could have broken you, and yet here you are, still standing, still becoming. That resilience is gold. That perspective is a gift. And it's a gift meant to be shared. When you begin to own your story, you stop shrinking. You stop apologizing for your existence. You walk differently. You speak with conviction. You create boundaries that protect your peace. You stop looking for approval in places that once defined your worth. And as you do, something beautiful happens. You start attracting people who meet you in your authenticity. People who don't need you to perform, who don't expect you to be perfect, who see your whole story and choose to love you anyway. Owning your story also creates a sense of freedom. When you stop hiding the parts of you that you think disqualify you, you start experiencing life with less fear. You're no longer exhausted by the act of pretending. You're no longer shackled to shame. And in that freedom, there's clarity. You begin to ask different questions. What does success mean to me now? What kind of legacy do I want to leave? What does it look like to live a life rooted in truth, not approval? And even if no one ever claps for your story, even if no one ever gives you a standing ovation, the act of telling it will liberate you. It will remind you that you have agency, that you are not defined by what happened to you, but by how you rise from it, that every word, every wound, every win has a place. Your story is not a detour. It's the path. It's the reason you can lead others home to themselves because you've walked that road barefoot. Perfection is one of the most seductive lies we're taught to believe. It's a mirage, a constantly shifting, unattainable illusion that keeps us forever chasing, forever doubting, and forever falling short. We are conditioned to think that only when things are perfect, when we're perfect, do we deserve to begin, to be seen, to take up space, to feel proud, to feel enough. But the truth is that perfection is not only a myth, it's a trap. It keeps us paralyzed in inaction, stuck in the loop of overthinking, editing, polishing, preparing, but never truly showing up. It convinces us to wait until everything is just right before we speak, before we start, before we step into our own lives. And in that waiting, we lose time, we lose momentum, and worst of all, we lose ourselves. Progress never comes from perfect plans. It comes from brave beginnings, from the messy, imperfect, raw attempts that teach us more than theory ever could. Perfectionism masquerades as a high standard, but in reality, it's fear in disguise. It's the voice that says, "Don't try unless you're sure you'll succeed." It's the mindset that demands mastery before permission. But no one ever got great at anything by waiting to be perfect. We become better by beginning, by failing, by learning, by showing up when we're unsure and doing anyway. There is immense power in starting messy, in starting afraid, in starting without the guarantee that everything will go smoothly. Because starting is the single most defiant thing you can do in a world obsessed with image. When you start before you feel ready, you break the illusion that worth is earned through flawlessness. You remind yourself and others that growth is a process, not a performance. That real mastery is born in the awkward, uncomfortable phases when things don't look polished, but they are deeply authentic. The pursuit of perfection steals creativity. It silences bold ideas. It keeps people from sharing their gifts with the world because they fear judgment more than they trust their own voice. Think about the books that were never written, the businesses never launched, the conversations never had, the changes never made, all because someone waited for the perfect time, the perfect conditions, the perfect version of themselves. That kind of perfectionism isn't about excellence. It's about control. It's about trying to protect ourselves from the sting of criticism, the discomfort of failure, the vulnerability of being seen. But the irony is, in trying to protect ourselves from rejection, we end up rejecting ourselves first. Perfection doesn't just hold us back, it disconnects us from others. Because people don't relate to perfect. They relate to real. They connect with struggle. They resonate with honesty. When we lead with perfection, we build walls. When we lead with authenticity, we build bridges. It's the unfiltered stories, the behind-the-scenes battles, the truths we were afraid to share that end up being the most impactful. That's where we find community. That's where others can see themselves in us and feel less alone. Letting go of perfection doesn't mean lowering your standards. It means shifting them. It means understanding that success isn't about having no flaws. It's about having the courage to keep showing up despite them. It's about valuing progress over polish, truth over image, movement over stagnation. You can still aim for excellence while embracing imperfection. In fact, the people who create the most meaningful work are those who aren't afraid to be seen mid-process, who are willing to say, this isn't perfect, but it's real, and that's enough. There is a sacred kind of freedom that comes when you stop waiting to be flawless. When you start showing up in your wholeness, messy, brave, honest, and human, you realize that the goal isn't to be perfect. The goal is to be present. The goal is to engage fully, even when the path ahead is unclear. You begin to understand that confidence doesn't come from getting it right every time. It comes from proving to yourself that you can survive getting it wrong and still keep going. Some of the most powerful breakthroughs in life come when we give ourselves permission to fail, when we embrace mistakes not as reflections of inadequacy, but as necessary steps on the path of growth. Every stumble, every awkward moment, every misstep holds wisdom if we're willing to learn, if we're willing to stop punishing ourselves for being human. Think of a child learning to walk. They fall again and again, but never once do we say, you should wait until you're perfect before you try that. No, we celebrate the effort. We cheer the first step, the wobble, the fall, the try again. Somewhere along the line, we stopped offering that grace to ourselves. We started believing that adulthood means getting it right the first time. But the truth is, mastery in any area, whether it's a skill, a relationship, a passion, comes from repetition, from revision, from reflection, not from perfection. There is a boldness that comes from accepting your imperfections. It says, I may not have all the answers, but I'm here, I'm willing, I'm growing. That posture is magnetic. That presence is powerful because it's real, and real is rare. Real cuts through noise. Real connects. Real leads. The world doesn't need more perfection. It needs more people who are brave enough to be in progress. People who are willing to show their process, not just their highlight reels. People who are more committed to truth than to image. People who believe that messy action beats silent perfection every single time. There is a belief many of us carry without even realizing it that we must say earn our worth. From childhood, we are subtly taught that approval is currency, that we receive love when we behave, when we succeed, when we impress. That praise comes after achievement, that belonging follows performance. So we grow up thinking that being enough is something conditional, something that must be proven, demonstrated, validated by others. We begin to measure our value by external standards, our grades, our appearance, our productivity, our relationships, our accolades. And when we inevitably fall short of perfection, as all humans do, we start to question whether we're enough at all. But here is the truth, stripped bare of pretense and pressure. You do not need permission to be enough. You do not need someone else to tell you that you matter. You do not need the world to approve of you in order to believe in your own worth. Worth is not something you acquire. It's something you are born with. It's not something to be achieved. It's something to be remembered. Underneath the masks, the roles, the expectations you've been trying to meet, there you are. Already whole, already worthy, already enough. The idea that you must do in order to be is deeply rooted in a society that glorifies hustle and dismisses humanity. You are told that your value lies in your ability to produce, to serve, to win, to prove. That rest is laziness. That softness is weakness. That slowing down means you're falling behind. So you keep pushing, performing, pretending. You learn to silence your needs, to swallow your voice, to sacrifice your joy, all in pursuit of a standard that keeps moving. And in that chase, you lose sight of your own intrinsic value. There's a certain kind of exhaustion that comes not from doing too much, but from constantly trying to be enough. It's the emotional fatigue of feeling like you have to wear 1,000 different masks just to belong. The burnout of bending yourself into someone else's mold. The ache of always needing to prove that you're worth the space you take up. but you were never meant to be in a constant state of justification. You were meant to exist in the fullness of who you are, not a diluted version that's palatable to others. Imagine what might shift in your life if you truly believed you were enough right now, not 10 pounds from now, not after the promotion, not when the relationship improves, not when you finally heal completely, but right now with all your contradictions, with your messy past, your unanswered questions, your rough edges. What if enoughness wasn't a finish line to cross, but a foundation to stand on? What if the work wasn't to become enough, but to live like you already are? You are not too much, and you are not enough. You are not behind. You are not a problem to be solved. You are a person to be loved, first and foremost by yourself. This is where the shift begins. When you stop looking outside of yourself for confirmation and start turning inward for recognition. When you stop asking, am I lovable? And start declaring, I am already loved. When you stop waiting for someone to choose you and begin choosing yourself. Self-worth is not arrogance. It's not entitlement. It's not about thinking you're better than anyone else. It's about recognizing that you are not less, that your voice deserves to be heard, that your needs are not a burden, that your existence matters simply because you're here. It's about saying here, not because you're cruel, but because you value your peace. It's about walking away from what diminishes you, even if it once made you feel important. It's about honoring your own energy and space and knowing that being kind to others should never come at the cost of being cruel to yourself. You are allowed to disappoint others in order to remain true to yourself. That's part of worthiness. 2, knowing that your approval of yourself is more important than approval from those who expect you to stay small. The people who truly see you will not require you to shrink. They will celebrate the version of you that stands tall in your truth. But that begins with you giving yourself that celebration first. You can't wait for the world to see your light. You have to believe in it even when no one else claps. Living from a place of inherent worth also changes the way you pursue goals. It shifts the motive. You no longer chase dreams to prove something. You pursue them to express something. You create, build, strive, not because you need to earn love or validate your existence, but because you are honoring the gifts inside of you. Because you're living from fullness. Stop being driven by fear of failure and start being pulled by the joy of alignment. And when setbacks come, and they will, you don't crumble as easily. Because your sense of self is not tied to the outcome. Because you know a failed attempt does not make you a failure. Because you've built a foundation that isn't shaken by circumstances. When you believe you are enough, you begin to treat yourself with more compassion. You stop berating yourself for every misstep. You offer yourself grace, just like you would to someone you deeply love. You become a safe place for yourself, a place of warmth, honesty, and resilience. When you believe you are enough, you stop settling. You stop accepting crumbs and calling it a feast. You stop chasing what doesn't feed your soul. You stop trying to convince people of your value and begin moving with the quiet confidence of someone who knows they don't need to convince anyone at all. You begin to live not for permission, not for applause, not for validation, but for the deep inner alignment that comes from being true to who you are. We live in a world that glorifies independence. From an early age, we are taught to stand on our own, to prove we don't need help, to wear self-reliance as a badge of honor. We hear phrases like, don't be a burden, handle it yourself, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. The underlying message is clear strength is doing it alone. Needing others is weakness. But that message is not only wrong, it's dangerous. Because human beings are wired for connection. We are built to belong, to share, to lean, to hold and be held. Connection is not a weakness. It is the very foundation of resilience, joy, healing, and purpose. There is a quiet kind of suffering that comes with isolation, not the kind where you're physically alone, but the kind where you're emotionally disconnected even when you're surrounded by people. It's the kind of loneliness that grows when you're pretending everything is fine, when you're showing only the parts of yourself you think are acceptable. That kind of disconnection erodes the spirit. It creates a void that no amount of external success can fill. Because what we truly crave, more than anything else, is to be seen, not just noticed, but truly as seen, to be known, to be accepted as we are, to have someone say, I see you, I hear you, I'm with you. But to experience that kind of have to risk vulnerability. We have to let ourselves be known, and that can feel terrifying. When we've been hurt before, betrayed, misunderstood, rejected, we start to believe that it's safer to hide, safer to keep walls up, safer to keep people at arm's length. We trade authenticity for protection. But the truth is, those same walls that we build to keep pain out also keep love from getting in. The longer we hide behind the masks, the more disconnected we feel, not just from others, but from ourselves. Connection doesn't require you to be perfect. It requires you to be present. It requires honesty, not performance. It asks you to show up fully, even when you're messy, even when you're unsure, even when you're afraid. True connection happens in the spaces where we drop the act, where we say, me too, where we admit, I don't have it all together, where we offer our real stories instead of our polished versions. Those are the moments that bind us. Those are the moments where healing begins. There's a unique kind of courage in reaching out, in saying, I need help, in saying, I can't do this on my own. That goes against everything we're taught about strength. But asking for help is not a sign of weakness. It's a declaration of strength. It's a sign that you know your limits, that you honor your humanity, that you understand that even the strongest among us are not meant to carry the world alone. Reaching out is a reminder that we are stronger together, that no one climbs mountains without support, that no one heals in a vacuum. The truth is, your presence matters to someone else more than you realize. Your voice, your story, your energy, it has the power to lift, to inspire, to reassure. But if you isolate yourself, you withhold that gift from the world. And in doing so, you also deprive yourself of the connections that make life rich and meaningful. Community is not just a nice addition to life, it is essential. It's the thread that weaves through every moment of belonging, of purpose, of real growth. Connection also provides accountability. When we're alone, it's easy to spiral into self-doubt, to believe the worst, to give up quietly. But when we're in relationship with others, when we are seen, known, and supported, those voices of fear lose their power. When someone believes in us, it helps us believe in ourselves. When someone listens to us without trying to fix us, it reminds us that we're worthy even when we're struggling. That kind of support is not optional. It is lifeblood. You don't have to be surrounded by a crowd to feel connected. Sometimes one real, safe person is all it takes. One person who holds space. One person who reminds you of who you are. One person who listens without judgment. But to find that kind of person, you must be willing to show your truth. You must be willing to take the risk of opening up. And yes, sometimes you will be disappointed. Not every connection will be safe. Not everyone will meet you where you are. But don't let the fear of being hurt keep you from ever trying again. Because the right connections, the life-giving ones, are worth that risk 1,000 times over. There is something incredibly healing about mutual vulnerability, about looking into someone else's eyes and realizing they've been where you are, that they know what it's like to fall apart and rebuild, that they carry scars too. That kind of shared understanding has the power to undo years of shame and silence. It creates a sense of we're in this together that no achievement ever could. It reminds you that you are not broken, you are not alone, and you are not too much to be loved. When we lean into connection, we soften. We become more compassionate with others and with ourselves. We stop viewing life as a competition and begin to see it as a shared experience. We realize that our pain, our dreams, our fears, they are not unique in their existence, only in their expression. And that creates empathy. It dissolves the illusion of separation. It builds bridges across differences. It creates the conditions for real, lasting transformation, not just individually, but collectively. To connect deeply with others, you must first be willing to connect deeply with yourself. That means sitting with your own truth, listening to your own heart, honoring your needs, telling yourself the truth, even when it's hard to hear. Because the depth of your connection with others can only match the depth of your honesty with yourself. When you meet yourself with compassion, you'll begin to attract people who do the same. When you embrace your humanity, you create space for others to do the same. And in that space, connection becomes not just possible, it becomes inevitable.